Bhagavate Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 21. Kalam karma swabhavam cha mayesho mayaya svaya atman yadrichaya praptam vibhu pushurupadade.
The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature for which they were created, and he again measures them independently.
Kalat guna vyaktikaraha paranamaha svabhavataha karmano janma mahataha purushadistitadabhut.
After the incarnation of the first Purusa,
Karanavasya Sivas Vishnu.
Vasavi Vishnu, the Mahatattva or the principles of material creation take place and then is manifested, and in course of time three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances. They transform into activity.
Mahastu vikurvanad rajaha satvopam brimitat tamaha pradhanastva abhavad dravya jnana kriyatmakaha.
Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter is its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play.
Mahastu vikurvanat rajaha sattvo prabhimilitat tamaha pradhanastva abhavad dravya jnana kriyatmakaha.
The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that involve matter, knowledge, and material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narada, you are quite competent to understand this.
Krishna. Sorry, my sound. Tamasadapi bhutadir vikurvanadabho navaha tasya matra guna shabdo lingam yadrashti drishayaho.
From the darkness of false egos, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. Its suitable form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen.
Nabaso ta vikurvanad abhut sparsha gano nilaha paranvayach shabdavamscha prana oja saho balam vayorapi vikurvanat kalakarma svabhavataha udapadyata tejo vai rupavat sparsha shabdavat tejasastu vikurvanat asid amborasatmakam rupavat sparshavachamvo koshavacha paranvayat Visheshastu vikurvanat ambaso gandhavanabhut paran vayadrasaspasha shabdarupa gunanvitaha.
Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch. And by previous succession, the air is also full of sound and basic principles of duration of life. sense perception, mental power, and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with the sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water, full of juice and taste, as previously it also has form and touch and is also full of sound, and water being transformed from the very goodness on earth appears odorous and as previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form respectively.
वैकारिकान् मनोजज्ञे देववैकारिका दश दिग्वातार्क प्रचेतोष्वि वैनीन्द्रोपेन्द्रमितकः.
Form the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the
Sun God,
sun god, the father of the
Daksha Prajapati,
Daksha Prajapati, the Asvini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipful deity in heaven, the chef of the Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prati, all come into existence.
तेजसात्तु विकुर्वाणात् इन्द्रियाणि दशा भवान् ज्ञानशक्तिः क्रिया शक्तिर्बुद्धिः प्राणश्च तेजसो श्रोतं त्वग्रे ग्राणदृग्जीव वाग्दोर्मेत्राङ्घ्रिपायवः.
By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet of for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated.
यदैते सङ्गता भाव उतीन्द्रियमनुगुणः यदा यतना निर्माणे न शेकुर्ब्रह्मवित्तमा.
O Narada, the best of transcendentalists, the forms of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled.
तदा संहत्य चन्योन्यं भगवच्छक्तिर्चोदितः सदसत्त्वम् उपादाय चोभयं शश्रुर् हि अधः.
Thus, when all these became assembled by force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and secondary causes of creation.
वर्षपूगसहस्रान्ते तदन्दमुदकेशयं कालकर्म स्वभावस्तो जीवो जीवमजीवयत्.
Thus, all the universes remained thousands of aeons within the water, the casual ocean, and the Lord of the living beings entering in each of them caused them to be fully animated.
स एव पुरुषस्तस्मात् अन्धं निर्विद्य निर्गतः सहस्रोऽङ्घ्रिभावक्षः सहस्राननाशेषिवान्.
The Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the casual ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself into Hiranyakabir, he entered into each universe and assumed the Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc.
यस्येहा वयवेर्लोकान् कल्पयन्ति मनीषिणः कत्याद्भिरधः सप्त सप्तोर्ध्वं जगन्नाथिभिः.
Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord.
पुरुषस्य मुखं ब्रह्म क्षत्रम् एतस्य बाहवः उर्वोर्वैश्यो भगवतः पद्भ्यां शूद्रो व्यजायत.
The Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Sidras are born of his legs.
भूलोकः कल्पितः पद्भ्यां भुवर्लोको सनाभितः यदा स्वर्लोक उरुसा महर्लोको महात्मनः.
The lower planetary systems up to the limit of earthly satram are said to be situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems, beginning from Bridraloka, are situated in his navel, and the still higher planetary systems, occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints, are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord.
ग्रीवायां जनलोकस्य तपोलोकस्तनद्वयात् मूर्धभिः सत्यलोकस्तु ब्रह्मलोकः सनातनः.
From the forefront of the chest up to the neck of the universal form of the Lord are situated the planetary systems named Janaloka and Tapaloka, whereas Satyaloka, the topmost planetary systems, is situated on the head of the form. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal.
तत्कत्यां चातलं क्लिप्तम् उरुभ्यां वितलं विभुः जानुभ्यां सुतलं शुद्धं जङ्घाभ्यां तु तलातलम् महातलं तु गुल्फाभ्यां प्रपदाभ्यां रसातलं पातालं पादतलता इति लोकमया पुमान्.
My dear son Narada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Artya, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitla, is situated on the thighs. The third, Satya, on the knees. The fourth, Tatrala, on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatatla, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasita, on the upper portion of the feet, and the seventh, Patla, on the soles of the feet. Thus, the Virat form of the Lord is full of planetary systems.
भूलोकः कल्पितः पद्भ्यां भुवर्लोको सेनाभितः स्वर्लोकः कल्पितो मुद्ना इति वा लोककल्पना.
Others may divide the whole planetary system into 3 divisions, namely the lower planetary systems on the legs up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems Sarvaloka, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Hare Krishna, and sorry for my mistakes.
Thank you. Very beautiful recitations. Thank you very much. So, Jyoti Mataji, can I share my screen?
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So today we will be discussing verse number 30 and 31st of the fifth canto of the fifth chapter of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Yam Pravrajantamanopetamopetकृत्यं Dvaipayano Virahakatar Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Vinedus Tam Sarvabhutarudayam Munimanatosmi. So, 30th verse. Vaikarikan manojadne deva vaikarika dasya dikvatarka pracetoshve vanindro pendramitrakaha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation: from the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the sun god, the father of Daksha Prajapati, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of Adityas and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. Purport: Vaikarika is the neutral stage of creation, and Tejas is the initiative of creation, while Tamas is the full display of material creation under the spell of darkness of ignorance. Manufacture of the necessities of life in factories and workshops excessively prominent in the age of Kali or in the age of machine is the image of society of subsistence, shelter for sleeping, defense for protection, and commodities for satisfaction of the senses. The senses are the practical signs of life and will be explained in the next verse. Human civilization is meant for purifying the senses, and objects of sense satisfaction should be supplied as much as absolutely required, but not for aggravating artificial sensory needs. Food, shelter, defense, and sense gratification are all needs of existence. Otherwise, such increasing the artificial needs as in the standard of material civilization or advancing the economic development of human society is a sort of engagement in darkness. Without knowledge, by such engagement, in order to engage them in satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord, being the supreme processor of spiritual senses, is the master of the senses. Rishikesha. Rishika means sense, means the senses, and the Isha means the master. The Lord is not the servant of the senses, or in other words, he is not directed by the dictation of the senses, but the conditioned souls or the individual living entities are servants of the senses. They are conducted by the direction or dictation of the senses, and therefore, material civilization is a kind of engagement in sense gratification only. The standard human civilization should be to cure the disease of sense gratification, and one can do this simply by becoming an agent of satisfying the spiritual senses of the Lord. The senses are never to be stopped in their engagements, but one should purify them by engaging them in the pure service of sense gratification of the master of the senses. This is the instruction of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Arjun wanted first of all to satisfy his own senses by his decision not to fight with his kinsmen and friends, but Lord Krishna taught him the Bhagavad Gita just to purify Arjuna's decision for sense gratification. Therefore, Arjun agreed to satisfy the senses of the Lord, and thus he fought the battle of Kurukshetra as Lord desired. Excuse me. The Vedas instruct us to get out of the existence of darkness and go forward on the path of light. Tamasima Jyotirgamaya. It should be tamaso, but anyway. The path of light is therefore to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Misguided men or less intelligent men follow the path of self-realization without any attempt to satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord by following the path shown by Arjun and other devotees of the Lord. On the contrary, they artificially try to stop the activities of the senses, yoga system, or they deny the transcendental senses of the Lord, jnana system. The devotees, however, are above the yogis and the jnanis because pure devotees do not deny the senses of the Lord. They want to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Only because of darkness of ignorance do the yogis and jnanis deny the senses of the Lord and thus artificially try to control the activities of the diseased senses. In the diseased condition of the senses, there is too much engagement of the senses in increasing material needs. When one comes to see the disadvantage of aggravating the sense activities, one is called jnani. And when one tries to stop the activities of the senses by the practice of yogic principles, he is called yogi. But when one is fully aware of transcendental senses of the Lord and tries to satisfy his senses, one is called a devotee of the Lord. The devotees of the Lord do not try to deny the senses of the Lord, nor do they artificially stop the actions of the senses, but they do voluntarily engage the purified senses in the service of the master of the senses, as was done by Arjun, thereby easily attaining the perfection of satisfying the Lord, the ultimate goal of all perfection. What verse comes to mind when we are reading this? Yogis and senses. Anyone? From Bhagavad Gita, what is the verse which comes to our mind? No one? Yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam sameyukta tamo mataha. That's the verse. So let's go. Okay. 31st verse, we will. Tejasattu vikarvana indriyani dashabhavan jnana shakti kriya shaktir buddhi pranascha tejasau kshotram tvaghana drugjidva vagador medhrang gripayavaha. A lot of samas and sandhi in this verse. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Purport. The living condition in material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. Intelligence to counteract the hard struggle for existence is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge, and the living energy maintains himself by manipulating the active organs like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs headed by intelligence and the living energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described above. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So let's go back to the 31st verse. I don't know. Okay, yeah, the 30th verse. We'll start our invocation and then we will start our discussions. So let's start. Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Saavadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kant Radha Kant Namosute Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Janulambita Kanakavadhato Sankirtane Kapitaro Kamalaitaksho Vishwambharo Dvijabharo Yugadharmapalo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Avataro Yantah Pravishya Mama Chamimam Prasuptam Sanjeevayatya Akhila Shaktidhara Swadhamna Nyamscha Hastacharana Shravana Tvagadin Pranandamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tupram Vaikarikan Manojadne Deva Vaikarikadasha Dikvatarka Prachetoshvir Vahanyindro Pendramitrakaha. From the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest, and also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the sun god, the father of Daksha Prajapati, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. So here, Lord Brahma is explaining the process of creation to his beloved son, Shripad Narad Muni. And this is the background of this. So if we go back to the earlier verse, set of verses, this transformation of the sky, Nabhosotha Vikurvana. So because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch, and by previous succession, the air is also full of sound and basic principles of duration of life sense perception, mental power, bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, the fire is generated, taking shape with the sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water full of juice and taste. And previously, it also has form and touch, and also full of sound. The water being transformed from all variegatedness on earth appears odorous, as previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form, respectively. So the interesting part here is this is the creation in the from subtle to the gross form, and this one here is the actual the modes of material natures coming in the in the picture. So when false ego is in mode of is in contact with mode of goodness, the mind is created, and that's what this, and then the creation of demigods controlling the bodily movements will is explained here. So why we went to the earlier verse here? Because it is all related to the air. Air is very crucial aspect in this creation for the 30th in the 30th verse. So the controller of the air, no controller of directions, the controller of air, and how this is created, how that air is situated in different bodily functions, and how that works in the material world, that we will discuss first. So any kind of air in the body is divided into 6 types. Does anyone know what are all the 6 types of air in the body? It's basically the 5 principal types, but the master of that all air is also is called the same, prana, is the life air. And then there is 5 types of air. Again, there is in that 5 types, there is prana, and prana, apana, samana, udana, and vyana. So these are the 5 types of air. This prana is the principal air, is the air of life. And who is the presiding deity? Does anyone know of this prana air, or the prana, the principal air in our life? Lord Shiva is the presiding deity of that life air in the material body. There are other forms of air or other manifestations of air, which when the churning of that air happens in our body itself. This is basically the microscience which is described later briefly by Lord Brahma in the 3rd canto, then in fair amount of details in by Lord Kapil Dev to his mother Devahuti, and then also by Narad Muni in different perspectives when he's explaining the creation, or how this functionality, how this function is of the body to King Prachina Varishat by giving an example of King Puranjan. So we won't go to those details because it will eat up almost all of our time. So we'll just focus on the types of air. In Ayurveda, as most of us know, there are 3 types or 3 principles. One is Vata, which is air, and from that Vata, when it gets combined with fire and with fire principally, that the principle is Pitta, which is bile. And then when the earth principle becomes predominant with Vata and Pitta, we have Kapha. So there are three basic principles in Ayurveda. And then if there is any kind of dysfunctional or any problems, it is called dosha. So any three dosha means three types of defects in the material body occur because of the imbalance of these three principles. So Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So that is the basis of the Ayurveda. And as we all know, Ayurveda is the best preventive medication available to human beings, even as per the modern scientific theory. And naturally, by the Vedic principles, yeah, Ayurveda is the one which is the given by the Lord Dhanvantari, who is the manifestation or the expansion of Lord himself. Now, how these five types of air work, which is the expansion of the principal air called prana, and what are all the areas of the body which can tell us about the modes of material nature and the creations of different entities which are described here. So prana, which is the first base principle of the principal prana, out of five, area of the body which it controls or governs is chest and head. It governs the activity of intake, inspiration, propulsion, forward momentum, and it is basically the basis for the intelligence, which is in, and that's why this first expansion of prana is in mode of goodness. And then rest of the four expansions of this, the principal prana, are primarily in mode of mode of passion and mode of ignorance. So the second one is apana. Area of body which is related to that is pelvis, and it governs elimination, downward and upward air movements. Third one is samana, which is based on the navel. It governs assimilation, discernment, inner absorption, and consolidation. The fourth one is called udana, which is based near here on our throat. Related to which chakra? Vishuddha chakra. And that governs the growth, speech, expression, ascension, and upward movement. And the last one is Vyana, which is covering the whole body, and that governs the circulation of the air on all levels, expansiveness, and pervasiveness. So, what this tells us, if someone, just going a little bit further, if someone has a Vayu dosh, that person, what type of problems that person will have? Mental problems, rheumatism, joint pains, constipation, and so on, which are related to this. So what that means is, if there is any sound in the body which is not supposed to be there, that means the person has a Vayu dosh, and it's because of the disturbed air. In case of the therapies, for example, acupressure and acupuncture, people insert that hollow needle, just take that air out, the trapped air, and it relieves the pain. So you can imagine how powerful this Vayu Tattva is, and how important the to understand what mode of material nature we are in and where we should be heading to. And that's the reason we just quickly went through the types of airs and how those are related to our body. So you can easily see the modern science, which is based on the atheistic ideas, or atheism is the base for that, can't relate to this ancient science of creation of the Vedic literature, because it is given by the Lord himself. And when there is atheistic idea, people come up with a lot of speculation. And you can see the problem here. When the basis is missing, person will come up with a lot of speculation and will start writing volumes of books or some theories to justify that speculation. And that's the reason in the modern science we are missing the clarity. People will come up with the idea of evolution. Basically, it's to make sure, give that false optimism that we are getting better, which is actually we are cheating ourselves. And that is the reason Srila Prabhupada is giving very vivid details of what is the necessity of life. So now you can see here in translation, controller of the air, he's giving the fair amount of insight of the necessities for human beings, for us. And that's the reason he's explaining what we need to do, what is the objective of human life. The unnecessary expansion of factories and about the age of this machine and how it is taking us towards the darkness, artificially sensory needs. Here it is. So, and then he comes to the main basic point of Rishika. Rishika means senses. Isha means master. So, creation here, the controller of the directions, the air and everything, the creation he is telling us, because everything, the whole creation is meant to satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord and not our senses. And that's the base, that's the reason he's giving us here. Our senses, when those are connected to the Lord's senses, that senses will have some meaning. That is the necessity of why these senses are created. If we think that sense gratification is or any human being thinks that sense gratification is the primary source or primary reason for the existence, that means that person is in illusion. And that's where Sripad Narad Muni, because it is Narad Muni has asked the question and he's getting answered by his father, Brahmaji. So let's come, what Narad Muni says in Narad Pancharatra, one of the instructions he has given, Sarvopadhi Vinirmukta Tatparatvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktiruchyate, which is the conclusion of this. So Sarva Upadhi, all the designations, we should be free from that. Sarvopadhi Vinirmukta Tatparatvena Nirmalam. And because those designations of man, woman, and I'm boss, I'm somebody higher up in the society, and so on and so forth. Tatparatvena Nirmalam. What Narad Muni says is that is nothing but a dirt on our consciousness. Tatparatvena Nirmalam, Paratvena. We should give it back to that material society, to the material world. And we should purify our existence. How? By satisfying the senses of the Lord. Nirmala. Mala means dirt. Nirmala means getting purified, removing that dirt from our consciousness. Rishikena Rishikesha. How? Rishika, senses, the connecting our senses to the master of the senses, who is Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhaktiruchyate. Using our all senses, we should be serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the verse Narad Muni is telling us here. And then in the second paragraph, Prabhupada is telling us here that the Vedas instruct us to get out of existence of darkness and go forward on the path of light. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. The path of light is therefore to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Misguided men or less intelligent men follow the path of self-realization without any attempt to satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord. So that's where the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, if we go there, 5th and 6th chapter, Lord is explaining us that how a yogi should be and what is the necessity of connecting our senses, connecting our consciousness for the service of the Lord. And that's why the verse it said, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. So who is the best yogi? That's what Lord has explained in the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada is giving us the yoga system, the people who are jnanis, they deny the existence of the Lord and they talk about the impersonal nature of the Lord only. And and that's why they artificially try to stop the activities of the senses, yoga system, or they deny the transcendental senses of the Lord because the existence of the personality of Godhead they have denied. So obviously they have to deny the transcendental senses of the Lord himself. Whereas the devotees, however, are above the yogis, yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratma, and that's the verse again comes here. And the jnanis, because pure devotees do not deny the senses of the Lord. They want to satisfy the senses of the Lord only because of the darkness of ignorance to the yogis and jnanis, deny the senses of the Lord and thus artificially try to control the activity of the diseased senses, which as Bandhuratmai Manastasya, no, that is the 6th verse. Uddharedat manatmanam atmanam avasade. That's the 5th verse. Let's go back to Uddharedat manatmanam atma avasade. Atmaivayo manobuddhir atmaiva. That's the 5th verse. I think 5th verse from the 6th chapter. Let's see. Yeah. Uddhareda atmanatmanam na atmanam avasade atmaiva mano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmana. What he says is one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is a friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So Atma, and then Prabhupada is giving a very beautiful explanation of controlling of the type, what is that false ego, how material nature attracts the conditioned soul in all the purports now onwards. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. So for man, mind is a cause of bondage and mind is a cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage and mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad, verse number 2. Therefore, the mind which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness is the cause of supreme liberation. Very, very apt verse for today's discussion. So let's go back to our discussion for 31st verse. Tejasat tu vikurvana indriyani dashabhavan jnana shakti kriya shaktir buddhi pranascha tejaso shotram tvagrana drugjigvaha vagar वागदो में ड्रांग घृपायवः. by further transformation of mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. So, what this means is mind is generated and first or created first, and then rest of the senses, including intelligence and and living energy, are all generated. How that happens? In the third canto, when Lord Kapil Dev is explaining this process to Mother Devavati, in one of the verses he tells that how he refers to himself and says that how he enters in the Muladhara Chakra of Lord Brahma, and before that Lord Brahma has heard the sound tapa, the austerity and the penances, and then Lord enters in the chakra in the body of Lord Brahma, and then the Vedic sound starts, and through that that Vedic hymns, that Vedic sound, Lord Brahma starts uttering different words, different types of sounds, and that's how this whole manifestation takes place. At the creation of this material manifestation happens. So this is the these are the fair, straightforward, easy to comprehend this material existence Prabhupada has given here. The living condition in the material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. So what that means is, once I, long back, once I asked Shrutidharma Prabhu, His Grace Shrutidharma Prabhu, that what is the basis for getting a specific type of body with so many details, very intricate details of how the person looks, what are all the qualities, and how the person speaks, and everything. It was fairly interesting discussion we had. And so Shrutidharma Prabhu said that what any living entity deserves and what they desire, accordingly, the sound energy or the different types, there are 4 types of sound, Chatvari Vak, as it is called as, takes place from the desires of the soul. Obviously, the manifestation of the expansion of the Supreme Lord Paramatma is always there. But he just sanctions the desires as per our karmic bondage, and accordingly the different types of bodies get created. So the first sound which comes from the soul is called Pashyanti Vak. No, Madhyama Vak. So sorry, the first is Pashyanti Vak, the second is Madhyama Vak, and then the Vaikhari Vak, which is the actually gross sound, comes, and accordingly different types of bodies are created. Very beautifully Sridharma Prabhu explained it. It was amazing. So, and then intelligence to counteract hard struggle for existence is assisted by senses for acquiring knowledge, and the living entity maintains himself by manipulating the active organs like the hands and legs. So now, with this background, you can imagine that how our how the functions of the bodies, our different bodies in this material world, are taking place. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion, because the creation is based on mode of passion. And that's why Lord Brahma, who is explaining everything here, he is the presiding deity of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs headed by intelligence and the living energy, prana, again, this is the master, the principal energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described before. So this is what today's discussion is, where this air or how it is referred back to Bhagavad Gita, we can check in some of the verses. So in chapter 10, Lord says that I am the Marichi among Maruts, and Marut is none other than the Vayu. How that different types of Marut come in existence when Rudra, expansion of Lord Shiva, the principal deity, expansion from the Shankarshan, Rudra and Prishni, they are the one who produce different types of Marut, and one of the Maruts is the principal Marut of that Vayu is Marichi, and that's what Lord says in the 10th chapter. Of the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of lights, I am the radiant sun. Of the Maruts, I am Marichi. And among the stars, I am the moon. So we can see here that this is one of the vibhutis, one of the opulences of the Lord. Where else Lord talks about the air? He says that one who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and by the strength of the yoga. Here yoga, it means addition, which is connection, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the reference to the air we talked about. Is there anything? Okay, this is an important verse. Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtatha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all together, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. What Lord is telling us here, that everything is his energy. So that is why, as Lord Brahma says in the 3rd canto, I think in the 10th chapter, that with all the facilities given to us by the Lord, what we are supposed to use those facilities for? To serve him. Dhyanesmano darshitam to upaskanam tasmai namo bhagavate nuvidhema tubhyam. So our whole dhyana, our whole consciousness, our focus of our mind should be to use these facilities: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, and their manifestation in terms of our senses. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So if it belongs to him and we have borrowed those energies for our existence in the material world, that means we are supposed to use those energies for the service of the Lord. That's what even Lord Brahma says in the 3rd canto. So that was an interesting verse. Again, in 9th canto, in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord says that those who are in a pure consciousness, those who have that, who are surrendered to me, they use all the facilities for my worship. And then he says that after Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, Yajyoshi Yadashnasi Yat Karoshi Dadasi Yat Tapasyasi Kamteya Tat Kurushamadharpanam. Everything you do, all your austerities, all your penances, everything you have, you should use to serve, to arpana, to surrender unto me. So that's the verse Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita. Again, we hear again, this verse is also coming from the Narad Pancharatra, Satvata Tantra. So for material creation, Lord's plenary expansion assumes 3 Vishnus. The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy. known as Mahatattva. The second, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, enters into the universes to create diversities in each of them. The third, Kshirodakshay Vishnu, is diffused as all pervading supersoul in all universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these three Vishnus can be liberated from material engagement. Again, which is the verse, how Lord comes and how he creates everything. We can relate to this through the famous, by remembering the famous verse, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam Evam Yuva Vyakti Tattvataha, as a principle that he is the one who comes here, who appears, who creates all the different types of energies, the material manifestations. Vyakti Tattvataha, the person who understands this tattva, the principle, Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Sorjuna. When the person will leave the body or this material or abandon this attachment to this material energy. That's the right way of saying Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma. Because Deha means not just a gross body, but it's subtle body as well, which remains there as long as there are attachments to this material world. Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mam Eti Sorjuna. And he's telling Arjun that he will not come back. He will be with the Lord eternally. Again, the next verse is a caveat, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. That is the condition Lord gives in that. What is the necessity of leaving this all material attachment? That's immediately he gives in the next verse. So that's what I thought of discussing and or presenting today. I think I don't have much to discuss further. Is there anything, any questions or any additions? No questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was wonderful class. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice
Hare
class.
Krishna.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.